For the 16th time in Apex history, heavyweights headlined the Fight Night card this weekend as we have Marcin Tybura taking on Tuivasa, two guys that have been on a bit of a slump or at least coming off of a loss and looking to get back into the win column. The co-main event sees welterweights Brian Battle and Loosa throwing down, and we do have a couple other intriguing fights, but I gotta be honest, even as much of a fight nerd as I am, this fight night does not have me that excited, but we break it down nonetheless because that's what you guys come to your boy for. Just a reminder, there are a couple other regional shows going down this weekend that I'll be breaking down strictly on the Patreon page. We got Cage Warriors 167, which may have already wrapped up by this time as it goes down on Friday afternoon. And then on Saturday afternoon, we have KSW, not to mention another Cage Warriors card as well. So if you want breakdowns for those, check out the Lock of the Night Patreon page. Link for that is in the description below. A reminder that this is the quick picks version of UFC Vegas 88 breakdowns. If you want the full breakdown where I go close to an hour on all 13 matchups, you guys can check out the MMA Lawcast, which I drop every Monday of fight week. You guys can find the link for that in the description below or in the card above here on my head if you're watching this on YouTube. All right. I hope you're laced up and ready to go because we're off and running with the first fight of the night, and that goes down between Haralampos Grigoriou and Chad Anheliger. This is a difficult matchup to uncover as both fighters normally have a similar skill set, but I do think that we'll see Grigoriou's speed, explosivity, and power advantage come into play here, allowing him to touch up Anheliger from distance. Anheliger normally has a great durability and good chin, which will make it difficult for Grigoriou to get him out of there, but I still think that we'll see the more damaging blows and optically favorable moments come from Grigoriou, which should allow him to get his hand raised on the scorecards. Next up, we got Jacqueline Amorim going up against Corey McKenna. Amorim, obviously a high-level BJJ black belt, but I think that McKenna has a good enough defensive grappling game to keep this fight in the stand-up round for the first round and a half. She should be able to implement her more superior striking game and then eventually look to grind out Amorim over the last round and a half as Amorim's ability to finish fights really starts to dwindle as we get into deeper waters. I expect Corey McKenna to grind this fight out and win it by decision. Next up, we got Joshua Culibao going up against Danny Silva in a fight that is sure to produce fireworks. Both guys love to throw down with their hands, but I do think that it will be Culibao who eventually drags this fight to the ground and tries to implement a submission-heavy game, which should allow him to go out there and snatch that submission and take it on home with him. The under 2.5 is likely the best value you'll get in this matchup. Next up, we got Thiago Moises going up against Mitch Ramirez. Ramirez obviously stepping in on short notice here. He came up short on the Contender Series late last year, but was able to pick up a victory on the LFA scene, which ultimately earned him this short notice opportunity. Unfortunately for him, he's fighting a much more skilled and experienced Moises, who should be able to have the technical striking advantage, but I think that will eventually open up a club and sub opportunity to choke out Ramirez and get Moises back on the winning side. Next up, we got Jafel Filho going up against O'Day Osbourne. Osbourne will be dangerous early with his speed and explosiveness and power advantage, but I think that we'll see Filho deal with that, wear on Osbourne up against the cage, eventually dragging him to the ground and then submitting him in the second or third round. We know Osbourne is very dangerous to deal with early, but is a guy that starts to slow down later on in his matchups and does give up bad positions and ultimately submissions like we saw against Almabayev, and I expect the BJJ black belt of Filho to do the exact same thing here. Give me Filho by sub. Next up, we got Josiane Nunes going up against Chelsea Chandler, striker versus grappler here, but luckily for the grappler, Chelsea Chandler is a much bigger fighter than Nunes. This should allow her to utilize her strength advantage to bully Nunes against the cage, eventually dragging her to the ground, and then I think she should be able to assert that top pressure and that dominant control, which will open up a TKO opportunity. Next up, we got Nathan Levy going up against Mike Davis. Davis and Levy making the return without stepping inside the cage in 2023, but I think Davis is the overall better fighter. He is the better striker, and he is the better grappler, which is what Levy normally looks to implement against his opponents. Look for this to be slightly competitive early, but Davis should start to pull away late, and I think that eventually opens up a finishing opportunity for him in the final round. I am circling the submission prop here for Mike Davis. Next up, we got Gerald Meerschaert going up against Brian Barberena, a battle of veterans here, and Meerschaert coming in as a pretty big favorite, which is a little bit surprising to me. I think Barberena has a good enough enough grappling defensive game to deal with Meerschaert's less than average wrestling game. But obviously, once Meerschaert gets the fight to the ground, he's very skilled with his jiu-jitsu game, especially considering the amount of submission wins he has on his record. But I think Barberena has been showing continued improvements in terms of working back to his feet and really letting his hands go. I think Barberena will have the striking advantage here, which should open up a knockout opportunity as Meerschaert starts to fail on his grappling attempts. I believe that we'll see Barberena get his hand raised in the third round by knockout. Next up, we got Pani Kianzad going up against Macy Chiasson. Kianzad should have a decent striking advantage here, but I think she will be frustrated and unable to deal with the grapple-heavy approach we will see from Chiasson. Chiasson has some technical improvements that she still needs to make, but her ability to bully her opponents and outstrength them and outmuscle them in clinch situations allows her to get fights to the ground pretty easily, and I think that's where Kianzad will eventually struggle to keep this fight. I think we'll see Chiasson drag her to the mat, rough her up from that top position, and keep her there for the majority of 15 minutes, eventually getting her hand raised by decision. Next up, we got a very intriguing matchup here between Christian Rodriguez and Isaac Dulgarian. In my opinion, Rodriguez is one of the better prospects that we have in the promotion. Unfortunately for him, he struggled to make 135 pounds, which is clearly the division that he belongs in. Now being forced to fight at 145 pounds, he is lucky that the guy across from him this weekend is not on the bigger side of featherweight, but still a very strong wrestler that he'll have to deal with. I think we'll see Rodriguez give up a few takedowns early, but he will provide the most resistance that Dulgarian has faced throughout his entire career. This will allow Rodriguez to keep Dulgarian off balance when he's on top of him, allowing him to either throw up submissions, get reversals, or work back to his feet and utilizing his superior striking game. I think we'll see Dulgarian start to slow down later on in this matchup, allowing Rodriguez to eventually clamp onto a submission after a poor takedown attempt, allowing Rodriguez to get his hand raised by submission. Next up, we got veteran Ovince St. Preux taking on Kennedy Nzechukwu, and this fight will actually be a few weeks shy of St. Preux's 41st birthday, and this will be his 27th walk to the octagon. Unfortunately for him, he's fighting a very young and a hungry fighter in Nzechukwu, who should have the speed and power advantage at this point of his career, and I think that we'll see Nzechukwu light up St. Preux early and eventually get him out of there by TKO. Minus 500 or minus 700 is a little bit too much for me at this weight class, and given the experience advantage that St. Preux will hold over him, but I think that Nzechukwu gets this done very easily, and the under 1.5 should come through without much issue. Co-main event time, as we got Brian Battle going up against Loosa, probably the fight that I am least confident in terms of picking a side and choosing a side, but I have to side with the explosive power striking style of Loosa. Also considering we haven't really seen Battle utilize the style that made him so successful at 185 pounds, and you have to wonder the fact that he continues to kill himself to make 170 is really biting him in terms of the performances that he can showcase. I think we'll see Loosa on the front foot for the majority of this matchup, utilizing his power punches to keep Battle on the defensive, and we'll even see Loosa try to get this into the grappling realm where he should be able to hold Battle into position. But Battle will be dangerous in terms of the submissions that he'll be threatening with and some of the shots that he'll try to land as Loosa closes the distance, but I still believe Loosa should come out unscathed and win this fight on the scorecards. And that brings us to our main event between Tuivasa and Marcin Tybura. We know Tuivasa looking to avoid his first 4-fight losing streak, but is a guy that is heavily reliant on his knockout power to get his wins. Unfortunately, when he fights opponents that are more clean, more crisp, more powerful, or faster, he usually ends up coming up short. In this fight against Tybura, he's going to have to lean on his calf kicks a lot to slow down Tybura. Otherwise, I expect to see a cleaner all-around game from Marcin. I think we'll see Tybura rough up Tuivasa in the clinch, drag him to the floor a couple times, maybe even open up a submission opportunity. But as long as Tybura can stay away from the knockout power, which is a tough ask, I think he's going to be capable of doing so, considering the telegraphing that Tuivasa does when he tries to throw his big shots. I think Tybura will come up short against the Tom Aspinalls of the world, but we've seen him take some big shots from guys like Greg Hardy and Walt Harris, as well as Ben Rothwell, and he rolls well with those big shots, and he still managed to come out on top in those fights. And I think we'll see something similar here, where he might have some scary moments, but I think for the most part he should be able to dictate where this fight takes place, allowing him to grind out Tuivasa over 25 minutes, either picking up a decision or eventually wrapping up an arm triangle choke when he gets Tuivasa to the mat. There you guys go, quick picks for this UFC Vegas 88 card. A ton of content to chew on for this week, not to mention a ton of regional action going down as well. If you want breakdowns for those, make sure you guys check out the Lock of the Night Patreon page. Otherwise, I will see you guys after the fights wrap up on Saturday evening as I give you guys my immediate reaction to every single matchup as it concludes. I'll see you guys then. Peace.